the changes that are being proposed. Temporary signs must follow the same duration limits, so political signs will not get any special or different treatment than other signs that are put out. Rules will depend on the zoning district, not the message in the signs. As in residential areas may allow a smaller sign, and a commercial zone may have a larger sign. Other things that are being proposed to remove labels like political signs or real estate sign that's already currently in the code. Instead, all temporary signs must meet the same height, setback, and duration requirements. Compliance is now based on physical characteristics, the size, the placement, or the duration, again, not the content. Additional changes that have been proposed are prohibiting certain kinds of signs, inflatable signs and devices, vehicle signs, roof signs, projected light signs, signs obstructing visibility or traffic signals, billboard and off-site advertising ban. New billboards will be prohibited in all zoning districts. Definition, the new ordinance will define what constitutes new and outdoor advertising signs. Non-conforming and abandoned signs. Non-conforming signs will have to be removed or brought into compliance within 90 days after the ordinance is passed, and there'll be stricter requirements for maintaining abandoned signs. Additionally, additional permitting and enforcement. There'll be stricter sign permit requirements than you currently have. Applications will be reviewed within 30 days, and that there's now an appeal process should you disagree with the building official's decision on your permit application. Design and aesthetics. It's going to encourage monument signs over pole signs, requiring landscaping around monument signs, and ensure materials match building architecture for more pleasing aesthetics throughout your community. And that's why you're here. We want to hear from you. The board wants to hear from you, your ideas. These are proposals, except for the content that we cannot regulate. Really everything else are suggestions. This is if you see in the actual ordinance, very long. There's a lot of whereas clauses, a bunch of lawyer talk in there. This has taken shape over many years from lawyers throughout my firm. This has kind of been brought together by helping a lot of different communities. So there may be some signs that we recommend in here to prohibit that you guys really want, and that's okay. Let us. That's why we're here to have that conversation. This is not. I'm saying you must do it this way. These are just suggestions, and so we need to just have that conversation.
Great. As such, I guess we can do it. We'll open up to the public currently. If you just choose to speak, please step forward to the podium, announce your name, your location where you live, and then we're going to try to keep it. Normally, the time we utilize for like 3 minutes is your maximum time to speak, but I want to hear what you have to say. The board wants to hear what you have to say, so we're going to kind of make it as very much a very free-flowing, open forum. So, because we may have time. So, would anybody like to speak? Sir.
Hello, I am Del Aitchison of Pasco Signs and Printing. We are a licensed electrical sign contractor right across the street. So I had a couple questions in going through this, and maybe it's straightforward. 123.3.34 talks about mascots and arrow signs or handheld signs. So is this saying that somebody can't hold a sign like a spinner saying restaurant with an arrow? Is that what that's indicating? That's no longer going to be allowed? Or did I misunderstand that?
123.47.
121.3.34, I believe. Commercial mascots and commercial message signs that are carried, waved, or otherwise displayed by persons on public rights of way in a manner visible from public rights of way would appear to be under the sign specifically prohibited. Is that accurate?
I'm looking. Sorry, I'm trying to find it.
It's on page 15.
34.
34. Okay.
34.
34. Did I say 24?
Yeah, you said 3.4. And then there were
3.34, yeah. 121.3.34.
Page 19 for the board.
Yes, the intent behind 34 is the persons that you sometimes see that are on the side of the road holding signs, twirling signs, trying to get the driver's attention, puppies this way, that kind of thing. That is what that's intending to eliminate for commercial reasons. Obviously, it's still allowed for
right, if it's
maybe for political reasons and things.
For political is different. Okay, all right. That's I don't do that, but some of my customers do. I've made signs like that for people in the past, and so I want to know so that I know what I can. If somebody says, "Hey, I want to sign like that, I can say, well, code doesn't allow it if that's really what that's intended to be. So that was one question. Another question is on the next page, would be about flags. So it's section 121-4, point number 3. It says flags displayed on flagpoles. Would this mean that it is okay to have a feather flag that says barbershop, for example? The feather flags being those things that look like a feather. They're about 12 feet tall, stick in the ground. Barbershop, restaurant, things like that. I was previously given to understand that those were not allowed within the city limits. But this does not seem to indicate that. So that part is crossed out. Again, people buy them from me. They say, hey, I want a feather flag that says barbershop or whatever. And if they're in the city of Port Richey, I have recommended in the past that they not waste their money on it because they're probably going to be told they have to take it down. So this looks like they're allowed.
Yeah, I don't see.
So when I just read that flags, I think American flag, something similar in shape and size, right?
Doesn't say that.
But your definition section for this code provision does not define flag. So that is something that we need to discuss to make that decision. When we say flag, do we mean what we think of as a traditional American flag? And you sometimes see sports teams on that size flag or something larger.
Or something that is to advertise a business.
So that's,
Again, and again, I'm not trying to speak out of turn here, but I would hope that the goal is to have a healthy community in which businesses can thrive. And so if they can't advertise themselves, they fail. And so this is why people hire somebody to stand out there with a spinner to hold a flag that says computers, or a sign that says computers or restaurant, is to try to stay in business, which increases your our tax base as a community. But if the businesses fail because they can't advertise, then that doesn't help anybody. So if they're allowed to have these flags, if they're allowed to have the sign spinners, I think my personal opinion, of course I'm in the sign business, but my personal opinion is that this helps the community to have stronger businesses because people know they exist. Particularly, you take a business that's 50 feet off the street. Yeah, they've got a sign on their building, but people don't know they're there if they don't happen to turn their head. Now, is there a possibility that somebody could be distracted by that and cause an accident? Yeah, I suppose that possibility exists, but most of the time, if you can get them to look up from their phone and notice somebody standing there with a flag, you've done a good thing. So that's...
I think the other flags originally had come to the fact there was an issue with them people placing them in easement, which was causing an issue, and then impeding visibility down the roadways. That was one of the biggest issues. Because I use them in my real estate company, I used to use them for open house signs.
Open house, exactly, yeah.
And so my team doesn't use them in the city anymore. So
in the city, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So, okay. I had 2 more points. I'm sorry if I'm taking too much time. One is 121-20.b, which talks about materials and says 120. It's on page 31 of my printout, which I got from your website. I don't know if it's there or not, but it says paper or cardboard signs are prohibited, which is great. But it says cloth or plastic fabric banners may only be used for temporary signs. There is a type of permanent sign that does use a flexible face. The biggest example probably around here is Best Buy. That sign, which is like 20 feet long and 14 feet tall or something like that, would be ridiculously heavy if it were acrylic. So it's made of a flexible face that's stretched and adhered to, in this case, a can. I know that, and I didn't make their sign, but STR just replaced their sign. Their acrylic sign that kept blowing out every time there was a hurricane, they replaced theirs with a flexible face, which is more likely to withstand strong winds than an acrylic face. So that may be something that people, if you're not in the sign industry, you may not know that. But I can see what you're saying. A cloth or plastic fabric banner may only be used for temporary signs, but there are permanent signs that are made with a plastic, a stretched canvas face, as it were.
So let me ask you a question then.
Yeah.
If you're in the sign business. The utilization of such materials, when you draw a sign up for someone who's putting up permanent, for instance, correct? Do you clearly identify how that media is used. It's in a channel. We screw it down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It would have if I were putting in a new sign like that, then yes, any new sign I have to apply for a permit for, I have to get engineering on, and so that would go through the engineer. The engineer would, but in the case of someone like STR whose face blew out, and they said, hey, I want a sign that's not going to blow out. Do you have anything available? You don't necessarily need a permit to replace a face in a broken out sign. So I don't know that you would necessarily have to go through an engineer in order to change that sign face to a different type. I know that there is a provision in here for, repairs or changeable faces on signs don't need a permit.
But it's not considered a temporary medium, correct?
It's not a temporary medium in this case, no. It's a
Temporary medium.
that might be something that you might want to think about. Cloth or plastic fabric banners may only be used for temporary signs. Note this does not apply to professionally installed flexible faces designed to be used as a permanent replacement for an acrylic.
Perfect.
Something along that line. And then the only other question that I noticed in my perusal of this was the landscaping around monument signs, which is a great idea. I like that. It's a perfect idea if it's in the front yard, but what if it's in the middle of a parking lot and there's concrete all around it? How would you landscape around that? So having that as a hard and fast rule that there must be I guess you could put a flower box, something like that. But if it's in the middle of a concrete parking lot, as some of these monuments and pylons are, I'm not sure how you would landscape around it. So that's my other question.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's all I have right now.
Any questions for the gentleman while he's here? Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Questions, concerns, comments?
I'm Chris Mayer. I am opening a car dealership at 8201 US Highway 19, and I support the city's goals for safety and aesthetics and whatnot, but I have some concerns with terminology. So in the ordinance, it says that activated signs are to be banned, but I might have missed it, but I didn't see where in the ordinance the definition of what an activated sign is. Is that a sign that lights up when a car drives by, or is that any modern digital sign?
I can answer your question.
Cool.
Currently, it's a different provision in the code that's part of the ordinance, but in section 101-11, activated sign is defined as any sign which contains or uses for illumination any lighting device, or light, color, flash, or alternate, or change appearance of said sign or any part thereof automatically. Any sign which contains moving parts is part of its normal operation, such as rotating shall be considered an activated sign. Additionally, a sign that depicts or contains copy which moves or appears to be moving with emits audible sound, vapor, smoke, odor particles, or gaseous material, or electric reader boards.
Okay.
Long one. I mean, I got all that at once, but that's what the definition is currently.
So it sounds like any digital sign is banned.
I believe so at this point.
I mean, it's digital signs today with small business having the ability to represent your business well. Drive-by traffic brings a lot of business into us, and digital signs is a very modern way to do that. Now, a lot of the pot shops and things that have flashing lights can be very distracting, but modern digital signs can display a static image, and they can have photocell sensors that will dim down at nighttime, so you can put that in the ordinance and require that. That way at nighttime you can still see it, but it's not blindingly bright. They don't have to play movies, they don't have to change. You would just limit how often they can change, maybe every 60 seconds, so we're not dealing with the flashing thing. Again, that's a distraction. But another distraction is signs that are too small, or signs that are so sun-faded you can't read them, because realistically, in my experience, and it's not scientific, when you're driving down the road, if you can't read a sign, you're going to spend way more time looking at that one than a nice, bright, clean digital sign that you can read the words on in 2 seconds and you keep on driving. It's no different than driving down the highway and reading signs on the side of the road. They take your eyes off the road for a second and you go right back. So a static digital sign that changes once every 30 seconds or every minute would be very beneficial to small business. Last point I'll make is I moved down here in July, and we've been coming down here for 10 years now, but in July, when I moved down here, I went to get lunch one day and went to a barbecue spot. Now, I'm tech savvy, I'm resourceful online, so I'm looking at Google and I'm finding, let's look at the best rated restaurants. And I found this 5-star small mom and pop barbecue place. Perfect 5-star rating, 50 reviews. Went in there, the only person working there is the owner. So I'm like, hey, well, what's going on? How's business going? And he was shutting down. He was in Newport Richie. He was shutting down because his sign out front was so small, you couldn't see it. I would have never seen it if I didn't dig and go to Google Maps and, sort by best reviews first. I would have never seen it. And he wasn't driving any traffic to a store. Or the gym that I decided to go to, the only reason I found that gym, and it was a very nice gym, was because they had a little A-frame sign right on the side of the road, which I don't think the other guy at the barbecue shop was allowed to do. So I don't know if he wasn't supposed to have that, but that led me to that gym. And now for the past 8 or 9 months, I've been spending my money and having membership at this guy's gym. So we got to have good signage for small business. And there's ways to do it that don't affect the safety of the drivers that are around. That's all I got.
Questions for the gentleman? Have you utilized said signage already for your?
Yep. Yeah, we have a 6 or 7 foot by 7 foot double-sided digital sign at one of our businesses in Winchester, Virginia. And yeah, it's got the photocell sensor, so it'll dim down at nighttime, and it will cycle through pictures, but it's no flashing, and I have it set up on that one to change every 20 or 30 seconds. So it's the flashing stuff that really grabs your attention that pulls you away.
Was there any issues with the city you as far as conformity there? Did
They actually, about 6 months before we got that sign, just allowed that to be in there. It was not allowed previously, and they allowed it to be in there.
Okay. Sir. You step to the podium. We need to step to the podium though, so we can hear you because we're recording it.
Yeah, anytime you talk, you have to come back up, say your name,
Yep.
so we can keep you on the record and so everyone can hear you.
Dell from Pasco Signs again, 6144 Ridge Road. So up until June 2022, Pasco County did not allow those digital signs. They just allowed them, and we just installed our first one at Walesby Clinic Eye Doctor over in Wesley Chapel. The way that this county's code is set up, only 50% of the sign can be digital. It is set up so it cannot have flashing lights. It is set up so, as the gentleman said, it has to dim at night. It has to be, a certain number of foot candles, whatever it is. And it cannot, it's like the billboards. You see the billboards around all over the county. They display a static message. They display it for 60 seconds, then it switches to another static message. They don't have any waving flags or any, cars driving across the screen. It's basically like a Jumbotron, but you don't have to use it that way. And so I agree. I had noticed that about the activated signs. I was going to ask, and then it slipped my mind, so I'm glad that he brought it up. I personally feel, I know that there are some in the city. The USA Car Wash has one. It's old, it's outdated, it's 20 years old. The Realty across the street from there is Century 21, I think. They've got a digital sign like that. It's basically like having the track letters, except that you can change it by typing on a computer screen, rather than going out there with a pole and sliding the letters in. And changing it once a week or whatever, you can change it as often as the city's code would allow. So I also agree that the activated signs is something that you want to consider having. Get into the modern times here.
I would not be opposed to reviewing Pasco County's ordinance if they've changed theirs, obviously. Thoughts from the board?
We're talking about signs, but we seem to have some businesses that have window signs inside their business that move, whether the lights are moving, whether they're trailing, whether they're flashing. Are we going to count those under the same ordinance as we do with the exterior signs?
I don't know what you're talking about specifically, so I can't really comment on what if that would be
Well, right on
Same
US
thing as a digital.
19,
I mean, we'd have to look at it and see what that looks like, and if that's something.
I think
we're
the short
talking
answer
about.
should be yes.
Yeah, it sounds
I
like
mean,
it's similar. It's just indoors
so the
versus
key
outdoors.
for this is, and,
'cause
Yeah,
and I'm going
but
to clarify for the public too. The key for this is to make it. The reason we're sitting here doing this is because we need to understand need structures, obviously, right? So your business up north has utilized this service before, and it's worked very well, right? Obviously, Pasco County sees a need for it, and they've modified their ordinances, as the gentleman has said from Pasco Sign, and those are the things that we're interested in. But also, another side of this is we need to the sign industry in general. And the poor gentleman probably is going to hear me say this, but the sign industry in general, depending which city and which location you are, and especially in Florida, it's like the Wild West. You can drive down US 19 and see everything known to man. And because of that fact, it does get to be very convoluted, very messy, and everything else. This has given us the opportunity, well, actually more the responsibility, to go ahead and modify our code anyway. We need to hear from you guys to understand what's going to work best for you, but at the same time, more importantly, it gives the city direction on how to enforce and more importantly, work with the citizens to be able to get you the best, to be able to get your business going on. Trust me, I'm a real estate broker. If I can't put a sign in front of a yard, there's times people drive around a house 3 or 4 times before they even realize it's there, right? It's just little things like that that make a difference. So, and I have many customers go, I don't want a sign in my yard. Okay, well, great. It's going to reduce the amount of people showing your house by 30%. That really? Absolutely. So it's just that there's need structures, but at the same time, by doing what we're doing, I think it's very, very important that we do this because it gives the city direction and helps people in his industry as well as the building department and enforcement as well for code enforcement to be able to have a clearly defined set of rules to work with. So to answer your question, most likely, Ron, yeah. If it's something that he's trying to get this sign approved, and we agree that this is the way it has to be, 60 seconds, it's a certain candle hours, or whatever, quick candle light numbers, or whatever it is, and all those things, and we have that clearly defined, it's not fair for you to drive down Ridge Road, and like we said before, a pot shop, or whatever you call it, has flashing lights. That's not what the code reads. So yes, we need to be able to give that information to code enforcement so that they can go ahead and make the proper changes so that you didn't sit up here and waste your time. So yeah, I think we definitely need to review that. I'm open to it. If it's something the county has looked into, absolutely. So,
well, do we need a definition of what a sign is? The only thing I'm pointing out, there's as you mentioned, a pot shop, okay? That it's not a sign, but the windows are lined with flashing lights that go around and change colors in a movement. Is that a definition of a sign, or can they say, oh no, that's not a sign because we're not saying anything with it, we're just using
lights.
the lights to
Catch your
draw
attention.
attention?
Yeah, that would
I
be
mean,
a sign.
correct.
A sign would be a message.
Unless they went so far as to paint on the window
Yeah.
that they've got the lights going around. Now it is a sign,
Yeah, so
right?
it depends
So definitions are it's kind of a convoluted mess. So, but you're right. If it's just lights that are flashing, then at that point it becomes, is it a code issue where the lights they're too bright or they're flashing incorrectly and they're causing an issue for traffic movements and all that. So then of course that's going to be a DOT issue. Oof, that's another one. We're going to take that to look into that.
Yeah,
'Cause
we'll figure it out and figure out if it fits
that
here or
could be
somewhere
it.
else.
Yes.
Is 60 seconds, is that a reasonable time?
I would like 30. I mean, I think 30 is reasonable.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll write down 30 to 60 right now.
And I'll find what Pasco County has drafted and bring that back to you guys.
I'm
next
curious
week.
what Pinellas has as well.
I couldn't find anything when I looked really quick, but I'll look.
I can help you find the Unicode. I can help you find where it is.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what Pinellas is doing too, because I know they're really on their signs. Okay.
The only other thing I had a question on,
Sure.
in the ordinance it says that any sign that imposes a glare on a driver is banned. So, I mean, a glare to me is any light. So is that saying that we can't have any lit signs? Like we have to block the sign from the street if it's lit when cars are driving by at nighttime?
Do you remember which?
Another situation, I don't remember. I put notes down, but I didn't put the section numbers. But it restricts glares to drivers unless you have some sort of barrier blocking the sign from the drivers. But what's the whole point of having a sign?
Well, I'm going to ask the gentleman from the sign company then. Is from glare, would that perspective be something? Is that also a medium? issue. So you can't have something that has chrome on it so it reflects and causes an issue.
Again, Dell from Pasco Signs. I did notice that in here. I took from that, and I didn't mark it, so I don't know where to look for it. I took from that it would mean that you wouldn't have any light that would hit somebody in the eye as they're driving by, like a spotlight pointing at the road to get your attention. But I reflect the sun. Yeah, I guess a chrome situation like that would also be. But I took from it. Like there's like you said, pot shops that have the green lights or whatever flashing around them. Lots of them will also have, open. They're like basically flaunting.
Right.
I know it says something in here about signs that are not visible from the street don't count. Like you can have obviously like the City of Port Richey emblem on your back wall here, not visible from the street. Don't need a permit for that. That makes perfect sense to me. But if somebody's going to have a flashing light mounted inside the glass, so it's an inside sign, but it points towards the street and flashes lights at the street, to me that should be something that should be looked at as being an outside sign, really. So
I think I found the language. It's under 121-3A7. These are signs that are specifically prohibited. It says any sign which has unshielded illuminated devices that produce glare. So specifically unshielded illuminated devices that produce glare.
So that would be something shooting a beam of light directly into, as he was saying, like
A lit sign in general is okay. Just a lit sign, cars can see it driving by. Okay.
Well, it might be depending on what you decide to do.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
But that doesn't mean any light, just unshielded illuminated devices that produce a glare. So I imagine something just with a big light shooting out is what that's trying to capture.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Yes, ma'am, please.
Hi. Danielle Merkel, 5614 Queener Avenue. There's in section 121.3, signs specifically prohibited. And it's mentioned a couple of other times throughout, but window signs which cover more than 25% of the total window surfaces. So we sit on Grand and Queener. We have an open sign in one of our windows facing Grand and one facing Queener. We have very tiny windows. The signs are about 2 feet by 2 feet each. They take up more than 25% of our windows. I mean, that's an issue because our windows aren't that big. But they're just regular open signs. You can't get smaller electric open signs.
Now, these are open signs that are like an illuminated open sign that's sitting in the
Yeah, it's they're the little LED lights that when you turn it on, it says open.
Okay.
And I mean, is that a problem? My partner's worried about that.
Sure. We've had this discussion before regarding the 25% rule. So the key with the 25%, because there's a lot of people that are utilizing window signs as far as painting is a big one. And then, of course, the new thing, and the gentleman will tell you from Pasco Sign, is window perf. Window perf is also a very big one. A lot of window perf. 50%. So, and they print on 50% of the medium. The other medium you can see through it. That doesn't qualify anymore, unfortunately, the 50% because of the 25. I think the key with something like you're saying is how much square inch or feet does it take up of that sign you're talking about in conjunction to the actual window. So unless they're solid like this, they have space or anything else. I think that's going to be one of those questions. It's just going to matter of measurements from that standpoint. And also, I think, what does the board think? A lot of these are, it's subject to interpretation by the building department too, right?
Yes,
So that's
yes.
that's the key,
So
right?
your definitions help them with that
Our
interpretation.
definitions are designed to help them, but everything can be done on a case-by-case basis as well. The city is not designed, and what we do is we just counsel. We give recommendations to council. Council makes decisions based off of what we believe and what they believe as well. A good council will go ahead and they'll do the research that we do and verify that the recommendations we made for our citizens is something that they believe they can back, and they make ordinances accordingly. We don't make ordinances here. But ideally, everything is subject. I mean, we do have other boards. It's a board of adjustment for a reason, right? There's variances for a reason. So if your windows are literally a foot by foot and you have to get your signs in there, you don't meet sign requirements. There's other avenues that you can go through. And this ideally is, by modifying this, gives them a form, right? There's a way to work through that process. I'd be curious to see what your sign looks like in comparison to that. The window is what building is it?
It's 5614 Queener Avenue. It's like catty corner to Naughty Or.
Oh, okay. I'll cross there. All right. Go ahead.
Is total window, you talking about a single window or is that total window of the whole building?
No, it's the physical window. So
One single window.
go ahead. Yes, sir, please.
Again, Del Pasco signs. It actually says the aggregate window.
Was it the aggregate?
So that means,
That,
think of aggregate stone. I mean, it means all of the windows together. So in my view, what I read about, I Googled it to see what aggregate meant, and it would mean if you had 4 windows, you could cover one of them completely. The other 3, that would be 25% of the aggregate window space.
Somebody else.
So I know that some of my customers have been told, hey, you've got to take that stuff off your window because it covers more than 25%. And so we did. We followed what I thought was, but then when I was reading this yesterday, I went, wait, it says aggregate. If it's aggregate, it's aggregate.
Well, I'm curious. We should look and see what Pasco says.
And one more thing on that while we're talking.
Yeah.
I've had this discussion with some people before at the county and here. There's no regulation that says you have to have any windows on your business at all. So if you don't have to have a window, then why can't you cover that window? You know what I mean? Like if somebody's in a warehouse and all they've got is a steel door and no windows, that's okay. But if you have a window, you're not allowed to cover more than 25% of it. I'm not following the logic there. So if the idea is you can't,
Logic in the same sentence.
I've been in this business a long time. I've seen a lot of things over the last
Which is why we're glad you're here.
45 years. Oh my goodness, I'm older than I thought. Yeah. So if again, if you don't have to have a window, then why can't you cover at least 50% of the window, or if not 75% of that? So.
With verbiage reads.
It does right now. And this is not new proposed language. That's the way it reads
Sure,
currently in your code. So we'll look at what Pasco does too, but I'll also point out, just to add more to the conversation, that your code defines a window sign as a displayed on a temporary basis for not more than 4 weeks, which is not what this is envisioning. You're envisioning, I think, a permanent
Correct.
thing. So we need to address the definition also if this is something we're interested in allowing.
Okay. All right, that's a little food for thought. You have more than one. I can see it.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
The other one was about temporary signs.
Yes, ma'am.
So we have an A-frame thing that you can replace the letters, and we got code enforcement telling us to take it away. So I think part of it was I was out of town at the time, and my partner had put it at the edge of our property, which is actually part of the city, and I think that was part of the problem. But my question is, if we put it, we have to go to city planning and figure out where our line is. If we put it on our own property in our grass in front of our building, are we allowed to have that A-frame for our specials for the day?
So that would be sandwich board signs, correct? Is that what we're talking about? A-frames and sandwich boards?
Yeah, okay, I don't know that. I was just like, I don't know much about signs, but
It wasn't all that clear with the temporary signs.
signs, but they do have to be in the right location. So that may have been the problem with that. And there is information in the code, and of course, I'm sure the building department would be happy to help to explain the setback and the right of way and where you can put.
And I know it can't impede traffic, or like if we're on the corner, they have to be able to see everything. I've read all that in there, but I was just wondering about so we can have an A-frame as long as it's on our property.
And it says sandwich signs, so that's what we're talking about.
So as far as exempt is concerned, on page 21, we have a section there where it says, number 8, one temporary sign may be displayed per street frontage, subject to the following restrictions. Of course, there's a list of restrictions there too. So that would be, I think, what she's talking about.
Yes.
It used to say non-illuminated real estate. We took that part
Yes.
out.
Yeah. Yeah. You
Or
can definitely have the
proposing to take it
temporary
out.
sign. It has to be in the right location.
Does it have to
for
be
residential.
taken in every night? Because in Pinellas County, we had to take it first in
I don't know that.
temporary.
I would imagine so. That'd be more like that'd be a building department question, but I think no, actually, you know what? That wouldn't be because it's not fair to do that to them. So it would be something we would want to clarify
Yeah.
when we're modifying the ordinance. So I would personally say yes, just because we live in a volatile weather area. You don't want to leave a temporary sign out, and all of a sudden we got a storm come out of nowhere and it's flying across into traffic. So I would say yeah, temporary would be
I
have.
feel like I read that you do, but now I can't remember where I read it. So, but we'll make sure.
Most restaurants, many restaurants, have A-frame menus
Sure.
boards. And of course, they're classified as signs the way we're doing it. But they do advertise what somebody is offering as today's special or something. So
Sure.
they certainly qualify as temporary signs. Is there a way to go ahead and add a notation that if they're weighted so they don't blow away, they'll be allowed?
I think the way it's actually the verbiage is currently, it's already allowed as long as it's in the proper location. So it doesn't have to say anything about being weighted. And I think the key part Lori's worried about, which I would agree with, is we need to have time limits attached to it. Does it have to go in at the end of business, for instance? So, and it has to be non-illuminated, so being out at nighttime doesn't do any good anyway. So, and it can't have any glare. Sir, please. We're going to put them on the board today.
You say non-illuminated, can you have a sign, like one of those solar lights in the ground lighting it? The sign itself is not an illuminated sign, it's just illumination on it.
That's a great question that I don't know the answer to.
We don't address that.
He's going to respond as well. And give
We're
input.
gonna go.
This is in regard to the sandwich board signs, the A-frame signs. It's on section 121-417. And what it says is in non-residential zoning districts, one sandwich sign per business establishment having a certificate of occupancy placed on the sidewalk no further than 5 feet from the main entrance door of the structure of the establishment. Now, my problem with that is if you're 50 feet off the road, they've got to already be in your parking lot before they can even see the sign. I know DNA Smoke Shop over here, they had one and they were putting it out by Ridge Road and they were told, no, you've got to have that. So they moved it down and put it 3 feet from their front door. I made the sign for them. And they had to move it and put it on their sidewalk. Well, it doesn't do them any good in terms of, smoke shop turn here, because you're already in their parking lot before you can see it. Or as the gentleman said about the gym, which may have been Luxworks. Okay, I made that too. And he put it out by 19 when it was just a little A-frame sign that said Luxworks Gym and with an arrow. And, if it was by 3 feet from his front door, this gentleman would have never found that business. So having it 3 feet from his front door really doesn't do anybody any good. I'm sure it wouldn't do this lady any good either, because they're already in your parking lot by that point.
Okay, thank you. So we maybe check that verbiage on that too then.
It is done.
Yes, ma'am.
In 5 feet based on sidewalks in front of the establishment, otherwise. Set it 5 feet.
That says 5 feet from the main entrance.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's because most sidewalks are going further than 4 or 5 feet.
But where she's at, for instance, I know her business, so she's talking about it's quite a distance back.
Yeah.
Probably closer to 40 feet, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then on 101.11, I'm confused about what this is. So on, underneath number 11, there's a thing, however, signs which are printed upon a wall of a building shall not be subject to the provisions of this land development code, and it's crossed out. And then number 9 above it says artwork that does not constitute commercial advertising visible from a public area.
101,
So we have a
41.
mural to get around the permitting and everything because we don't own the building and it was ridiculously expensive. Sorry, we called you. So we ended up having somebody paint the mural on our wall. So I'm just curious if that is going to be an issue because crossed out.
So the mural itself, is it actually?
It's our logo with our business name. It's like a tiki hut with our name on it.
Sounds like a sign to me.
There's been discussion and questions about that in the past. And the gentleman, who's actually a friend of mine, who owns NH Marketing around the corner from you, Nick, does vehicle wraps. There was discussion about putting a mural on the side of his building, the gigantic logo.
Well, ours is just, I think it was like a 12 by 8 spot in between the end of the building and a window. So it doesn't impede anything, or it's not in the window. And we got the permission from the owner to do it.
I don't know the answer to that question. And I know that's because I have a piece of commercial real estate downtown. And I know the city of Newport Richey requires murals to be permitted and approved by the actual city council to be put on a building. I don't know what kind of guidance we have. I know because I got cited by code enforcement for a mural that was there 20 years before I bought the building. I was like,
We had a sign that's been there over a year and a half when we bought the business, and we just had changed the name, but we were going by their DBA for a while, and we got coded for their sign that was there over a year, but it was a banner, so that's when we started looking at the codes.
I think mural. We're gonna have to dig into mural. I have a good answer for you, but I'd love to know the answer myself.
Yeah, because when we first did it over almost a year ago, in the code, it said that it wasn't, it wasn't part of that code. It wouldn't matter, so that's why we ended up doing it. So I was just wondering.
Okay.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or
Question on our tiki hut. How much of her sign,
sorry, push your button.
Microphone's on when you guys talk.
There you go. Go ahead.
how much of your mural constitutes the sign for your business versus, I guess, the artistic value of having a tiki hut drawn on the side of the building?
It's our logo. We put our logo on the building, so
Percentage of that art is your logo?
well, it's
10%?
Toasty Tea Hideaway, and that is, I have a business card, it has on it.
I know you're self-employed, right?
Yeah.
I remember.
I'll tell you, for the Chamber of Commerce, we were looking into doing the side of our building like a very famous Dutch mural
So that is our logo, and that's what's painted.
that showed library books. And of course, the titles on each of the library books would have been sponsored by our local businesses. Like Farrell's Air Conditioning would have this nice antique looking book, and it would say Farrell's across the top, which would constitute maybe 5% of the total image of just that book, but it was a minuscule amount compared to the total image of the wall.
Okay.
Are we considering how much of a mural is advertising based on the presence of the sign of the business? Or, as you said, you go down to Newport Richey and they got murals on the sides of the buildings everywhere, and it's very attractive and everybody loves them. And does that really constitute advertising?
It definitely would be advertising because you're advertising the business. I mean, like in her
In
example, she's
her
advertising
example,
her-
the answer would be
yeah.
yes, sir. Please.
But I don't think our code addresses murals at all.
I don't think either. And I know at Newport Richie, the murals in Newport Richie, those are not advertisements.
No,
Again, Del Pasco signs. I'm sorry, I hate to keep taking all the time here, but the city of Newport Richie, my understanding of what you're talking about is exactly that. That like if you have a camera shop, you can't have a mural of a camera on the side of your business.
Correct.
If you have a barber shop, you can have a mural of a camera on the side of your business. So if you have, because it's now a sign. So I know there's that gentleman down there that paints all the buildings, right? US 19 sign, whatever. And again, I don't know the guy. I've only seen his work. And I've seen his stuff online. But it to me, if you take a veterinary clinic and you paint cats all over the side of it and dogs and so forth, now that's a sign because you are now advertising what's in that building. But if you painted ice cream cones all over it, that'd be great if it's a veterinarian's office. Wouldn't be great if it's an ice cream shop because now it became a sign because now you're advertising what's inside the building. So it's sort of a fine line there. Painting a sign on a building is still painting a sign. You still would be limited to the square footage. And I don't know whether you need to pull a permit for that. That I don't know. But I'm just saying, if you've got a 100-foot building and you put a 10-foot sign on it, you're okay. And whether it's painted directly on or whether you pay somebody like me to make you a sign and an illuminated electrical sign, and that's you're still within your square footage. But, you put a mural that is not related to your business on the side, a picture of Chasco Fiesta on the side of your building, nobody's going to say anything because you are not selling Chasco Fiesta. That's not your retail establishment. Sorry.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sir.
Hi, my name's Dan Timmer. On these sign things, you got a temporary sign and a permanent sign. Is there sizes to the permanent signs? Because we're coming up on hurricane season again. I used to own a pub in Clearwater, right out of Mandalay, and 60 years ago, if you had a temporary sign, that sign had to be moved inside the building at night when you closed. It could only be put back out when you were open. Okay? A permanent sign fell under code enforcement, and code enforcement determined the size of that sign and how much damage it could cause during a hurricane. I built a building over here and I had to build it for 180 mile an hour wind loads under your rules. So is there these permanent or these temporary signs, if they're really temporary, they should be moved in and out of the businesses, or it's considered a permanent sign. If it's a permanent sign, then it should fall under a different ordinance and it should meet a code that you guys have to come up with so it's not a flying debris. Does that make sense?
We agree with you 100%. That's exactly what we said. That's exactly that's absolutely.
Temporary and permanent, and the permanent ones should have wind load factors in them and size.
Yep.
Because nobody wants any of these big damn billboards anymore anywhere.
Right.
Because they just fall apart and they don't work.
Thank you. No, we agree with you. That's points we brought forward that needs to be addressed and put in there. Absolutely. The definition of a temporary sign, and more importantly, when and where it has to be stashed afterwards, after it's been utilized. So,
Temporary means temporary.
correct. Anyone else?
If I may, if I
Yes,
can go
ma'am.
back to the mural conversation. I'm sorry, just one quick second. There is a definition of wall signs, which reads to me like a mural. It says a sign which is painted on, and then some other examples, painted on a wall of a building with its face with the plane of the building facade or wall, and which does not project more than 18 inches from such building. I don't know. I don't really understand what that means, but is that meaning murals, or is that meaning built onto something?
Built on the physical structure.
Yeah.
Right.
Like a painting attached to a structure, like another object.
Wow.
Yeah, well, that's what we currently define it. So we'll work on that too.
We need to work on
We
murals.
need to work on that
Yeah.
definition. Okay, sorry.
Sir.
Thank you.
Mike Lowe, Catches Waterfront Grill, Port Richey Marina. Specific to activated signs, are we Are we just speaking about, just with regards to the ordinances in general, are we just speaking about the WOD, or are we talking about all citywide changes?
It's a citywide modification of the code, right? Now, as far as the waterfront overlay district is concerned, that's a different animal. Nancy?
Yep, so the code, what we're talking about will be the definitions that apply everywhere. Then you need to go to your different zoning districts, and that may give you, may change some things. And I think yours does.
Yeah, I believe I think the WOD is different.
Okay.
It's positive.
So that would be something we can.
I remember doing that like 15 years.
Another question, are there not activated signs currently within the city limits operating? There are.
There might be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Car wash is one.
there are quite a few.
I think Catches is one.
Well, it's no longer working.
It wasn't working.
So
You can tell your brother to fix that.
we filed for our permit. We came and picked up our permit. There was a note with an asterisk that said, no LED lights, right? So our sign guy said, with pause, he said, hey, guys, I don't know what this means. I don't know what we should do here. But obviously, I'm, in support of activated signs because we definitely see the benefit and the need for them. As this gentleman had pointed out, there are many municipalities across the country that allow them. They know how to regulate. They know how to manage them properly. We look at it like, we have frontage on US 19 where we are. We're lucky enough to have that. But we're not allowed to have an activated sign now, right? And so we feel as though we're disadvantaged as compared to, the other businesses on US 19 that are allowed to have them. We just want a fighting chance. We just want to be able to lure people in, to tell our story and have our message on an activated sign. It could be something as simple as we're talking 30 seconds, 60 seconds regulation, obviously the light intensity and the levels. But, even if the city wanted some messages to be put out there on our sign, we could certainly do that and help the city with regards to communications and putting a message out. But no, seriously, we really feel as though the activated signs, they can be done properly. We don't feel as though being in the waterfront overlay district, we should be kind of handcuffed, right? So
Currently, you're correct. In the waterfront overlay district right now, there is you cannot have neon electric message board, variable lighting system, or other illuminated signs are prohibited except where a variance has been granted. Go to the, have to
right.
the Board of Adjustment and work on that. If that's something we want to discuss, it can be discussed, but that's a different provision from this ordinance. It would be another ordinance to discuss.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand why we're limiting the use of LED as a light, since it uses less power. It's more conservative. It's easier to work with. It has a longer life
Right.
than a regular incandescent bulb or a fluorescent bulb does. It's certainly safer to handle. And yet we're sitting back saying, Mike can't put an LED light in his sign. Under what guise would that even make sense?
Your code.
2005.
Yeah, but the code was built in 1912.
One of the, I think this was.
This-
He had his son originally put up. I know it was a different kind of bulb, but
Can you turn your microphone
We're not, we don't want to have specific discussions with people that are trying to discuss with the city
Correct.
remedies. We're trying to discuss the overall idea. I mean, that's definitely something we can talk about in a separate environment. But
But I do know that sign's been there for a long time. That one, particular one has.
Right.
I wasn't even aware it wasn't working anymore.
Yeah, the motherboard went down, and so it's old technology, right? And so the only suitable replacements would be a full LED sign because they just don't make the old technology anymore. Can't find a motherboard for it. We can't get it repaired. So, so that's the only solution for a sign like that is now LED. And so, to Ronald's point, yeah, I mean that's a better technology. Uses a lot less energy.
Produces less heat.
Yeah.
I mean, environmentally, it's safer. We don't have any noxious gases like we do have
Right.
with some of the other bulbs, and yet we're restricting what should be an advancement and working
Right.
backwards instead of forwards on what we're doing.
I think the key is going to be for us to get our hands on Pasco County side ordinance regarding that. That's going to be a big part of it for us.
Yeah.
Especially since they just changed it as recently as they did to 22. and then see what Pinellas County has too.
I have not looked at the City of Port Richey's sign code lately, but is there anything in there on activated signs for those that have them on 19?
That's not that.
Is that, are you talking about the red sign that's on 19 above the bridge? That one's,
Well, like Culver's has one. I know Walgreens.
I'm talking about the one that's not working. Is that the one that's right above the bridge?
Oh, yes, correct. Yeah.
The big red one?
Yep. Yep.
And when we have as much an investment in our waterfront district, they are in a completely different environment than we have with the general city, because they're having to attract a waterborne community as well. And you've got boats coming in that have to be able to recognize where it is and see it. It's almost impossible, as Matt said over there, for us to not make that a specific area that should have real consideration, because we're trying to attract everybody to the waterfront district. Bring your boat in, go to his lovely restaurant, go to Hooters or wherever when Hooters reopens.
Yeah.
And yet you're restricting him because we're not allowing those businesses to thrive in a manner they need to. That just doesn't seem fair.
To answer your question, Mike, the ordinance did specifically say no activated signs. So
Within the city.
2005, absolutely. And it's been in there. Whether or not we've enforced it, apparently we have not. I mean, businesses as new as Culver's have gone in. So,
Right.
like I said, I'd be very interested to see what Pasco County allows and try to get us in line with that, because that's kind of key.
And to Ronald's point, it says that any sign on any river is prohibited. And now, what does that mean exactly? If the whole business is on the river, or is it just a sign facing the river?
Yeah, it's physically on the river. I remember when we wrote all that for the overlay district. That was an interesting one at best.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. No, I agree. We need to definitely look at that. Lori's brought a good point. We need to review that. Anyone else? Okay. Board, questions, concerns? I'm assuming most of you have read through this. I've read through it multiple times. I've looked at it for the last 20 years. So,
I don't think I would like to say is I'd really like us to look into the factor of what Mr. Lowe brought up, the use of LED lighting, which is now preeminent in the whole world of what we're doing. And yet our code is so antiquated, it's restricting it. I think that needs to be adjusted.
Is that prohibited now, LED
Yes.
lights? I don't see the word LED in here anywhere.
Can't have any activated light, which would the definition would include. It doesn't say the word LED, but illumination, light device, lights.
Activated is just talking about
Yeah.
motion or flashing or something, right? That doesn't say LED.
Well, then maybe a lot
The
of this has to
LED
do
is
with
not in your
definition.
code.
right.
Right.
That's the point. This
There
is so old.
There is no,
No, you can't have it right now. If we want it, that's something we can adjust it.
right,
to
but right
have.
now, LED on itself is not
I don't.
prohibited.
Yeah. No, it is.
It's not
You can't. You can't. It's not.
Where does it say
right?
that? Where does it say LED?
Illumination of any light.
That's not
That would be LED, right? That's light.
LEDs are lights.
The lights.
I know.
I mean, I don't know scientifically how they work, but they're lights.
Come on
It
up.
just says activated.
My sign,
Well, a light turned off wouldn't
my
be a
sign
problem.
expert for the day.
Pasco signs, sorry. So there's a couple different types of LED signs, obviously, right? So there's the electronic message board, which is what we're talking about. It's almost like a big TV set or a jumbotron. But the other thing is, I mean, these may be fluorescent, but these may be LEDs that just look like fluorescents. And so lots of times we get calls from people and when they say, hey, my sign's not lighting. And lots of times I will go out and I'll take the fluorescents out and I'll put LEDs in their place. And then we put the plexiglass back in and it looks just like a fluorescent sign from the outside. I do not think that there's anything preventing using LEDs in that format. I think the LEDs that catches may have been told that they can't do is an activated sign, which would be like a jumbotron type situation. And again, why? Because if you stop to think about even what the gentleman said about environment, regardless of whether that's a big concern for you or not, when you take a plexiglass sign and you put track letters on it that say, special of the day, catch of the day is grouper for $9.99 or $19.99 or $39.99.
That's great.
$59.99. If you're lucky. So that's all well and good, but those plastic letters are going to end up in the dump at some point. Whereas LEDs, you in theory should be able to use them for the next 15, 20 years and just keep changing the message without ever having to end up with that stuff breaking in signs and storms and ending up in the trash. So there is some legitimacy to having moving into the digital world, and probably one of these days into the AI world, which that's another story.
AI signs.
Yeah.
Come to the board. Questions? Ms. Nancy, you have a lot.
Okay.
I mean, I personally am very passionate about the sign issue itself. I've stood right where you are and gone to city council, and I got fined for a real estate sign that was 4x8 for a business or for a subdivision I was doing off of Limestone, and got code enforcement send me all sorts of letters. It was $500 a day, and I came before city council. It's probably 15 years ago, and brought 34 signs that were not compliant in the city, and said, "How can you make me do mine when you haven't done any of these other ones?" Why? Because you know that when code enforcement shows up at my house and says, "Hey, Sean, can you move your boat?" I move my boat because I'm compliant. So you got to win. And I had that very same conversation. So I understand where the concerns are. I also agree that we know that this ordinance is very, very dated. 20 years in anything with technology is a lifetime. So, like the gentleman said, activated signs, we will definitely look into that. I agree. They can be done tastefully, and they can send a message. Catches has used that one for 100 years. So I didn't know it was even down. Let's put it that way. And I can't tell you how many times I've driven by the Culver sign. My wife says, "Pull over. They have this flavor ice cream today." So they work, right? So, and they can be done tastefully. And it's important for us to be moving forward correctly.
Yeah, but we have had a problem with code enforcement.
Absolutely.
Being very selective. I opened up the Chamber of Commerce. I put the same sign up that you have surrounding this entire city hall. Material with holes in it allowed the light in, where the sign portion itself was less than 20%, and the rest was to help stop sunshine and heat coming through. I got a $1,000 fine. Told I had to be taking my sign. I walked right in and showed 35 signs surrounding the city hall. And the question when we asked them, and I went to the mayor and the city manager saying, "Why is this selective?" Well, that's just the way the zoning and the city manager looked at it. It just wasn't anything but selective enforcement.
Well, and the good news is, by spending the time we spend doing these workshops in particular, especially when there's not a vote, there's no pressure to have a vote. We can have conversations, open conversations with the citizens, is to alleviate those kind of situations in the future, because we want it to be fair for everybody.
Yeah.
So, and I'm a big fan of small business. Small business runs America. So it runs this town. I would rather go to a local restaurant than a chain restaurant any day of the week just to support my neighbors. So that's key, right? I don't know. I'll go around the room. Matt, questions, concerns? Anything you want Nancy to look at?
My question, it relates to Mike's business, is to catch a sign is on 19. So does that fall under different state requirements because it's on 19 versus like a regular Port Richey road? Would that be different
I'm not going
laws?
to talk about a specific. We shouldn't
Yeah,
talk about a
so-
specific instance.
To answer your question, though, so we know that's not.
And would it be
There's
Pasco
not a lot of-
guidelines versus
There's
Port
not a
Richey?
lot of signage in the city of Port Richey. The joys of being in the city of Port Richey is we're 4 miles square, right? So most of the signs are either on Ridge Road or US 19. There are a few that come off different places. So to answer that question, it has no bearing. So the idea is to make sure that it's fair across the board,
Right.
whether you're Naughty or your Catches or your Hooters. It doesn't make a difference. It should be fair across the board. for
Yeah,
all
that's good.
signs.
That's what I think. But
Okay. So, good.
Yeah.
Randy?
I'd like to ask about vehicle signs.
Okay.
What does that mean?
So we need clarification on vehicle signs, and that was a question that was brought for us last time.
About that last time.
I know from a personal standpoint, it matters to me. I have a wrapped vehicle in the city, so does that qualify as a vehicle sign? Do I need to peel the wrap off my Jeep? That would be. We don't really have any clarification on what that is, and if it's going to be something that citizens don't want to deal with.
Usually it's the vehicle has to be running because a lot of people are buying like
Decrepit
dilapidated
vehicles.
vehicles and just setting them out on the street.
I knew Newport Richie had a problem before where they were doing same thing. Buy an old ratty vehicle, especially trucks, painted a bright yellow or blue or whatever color it was, and put a physical sign in the back of it and call it a temporary sign. Same thing the gentleman said before. That's not a temporary sign. That's a monument sign that you put wheels on.
it's a mobile sign.
Right. So and they're not safe. The wind comes flying by. It's not anchored correctly. He wouldn't sign his business on that. So I think we need clarification on vehicle signs. But Laura's right.
We have
Yeah,
a
perfect.
definition that we will look at and make sure it captures what you want it to capture. But I think it's kind of what you both just said. If it's sitting there, no. If you're using it, it looks like it might be okay, but we'll make sure.
Okay. All right, sir.
Let me say one more thing.
Just state your
Back
name
to-
again.
Dan
For
Timmer.
the record again. State your name for the record again one more time.
Dan Timmer.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, I have business here. 60 years ago in Clearwater, it came down to a thing about the First Amendment. And what it skirted to, maybe you ought to look, I heard it come out about the antiquated stuff that we have here in Port Richey. Maybe you ought to look at a bigger city, how they looked at it. Okay, and what it really came down to was the definition of the word sign. What the hell is a sign? And that's, just because somebody prints something and puts it out doesn't make it a sign. And that's what it came down to, because they were skirting on lawsuits. Like he said, he got a $1,000 fine and there's 35 of his neighbors got the same damn thing, and they got away with it. They didn't get fined. So that's a discrimination. So, before you start enforcing it, you better figure out what a sign is
Right.
to begin with. And it sounds silly.
No,
No, it's not silly.
it's not silly at all to us.
Exactly what
So.
we're doing.
Attorney,
She'll tell you it's not silly to her.
Not silly at all.
Yeah.
I love definitions.
what is a sign, If Jesus comes tomorrow, is that a sign?
Right.
That's a trick question.
I'd call it the end myself.
We do have a definition, so
I
we'll
have a
address
couple-
it.
She got definition first of all.
No,
Go ahead.
yeah, I was like, we can discuss it next time to make sure it incorporates everything you want for the definition for sign. I've marked it.
Maybe it's curiosity more than anything. What's a snipe sign?
We had the question about the snipe sign again.
And I did it last time. And I'll be fine.
I remember being young.
A snipe sign is a sign made of any material. This is what our code says. No. Okay. Snipe sign means a sign made of any material which such sign is tacked, nailed, posted, glued, or otherwise attached to any pole, tree, or other natural feature, fence post, bench, stakes, other sign, or other similar objects located on public or private property. The term snipe sign does not include real estate signs, warning signs, or open house signs. That's how we define it.
So like New
Like
York,
one attached to a telephone pole or something?
like New York City, they slap them on the thing and they
Yeah.
stick them up there.
So, like call this number for
Right.
your lawn mowed. That's
Right.
the snipe sign.
Then I think I know about it. But a pole sign. So you're just talking about you don't want a sign on top of a pole.
So the old and
It can be a
Dale,
how
you
big
can
is
explain
a
it
pole?
too.
When does it turn from a pole into
So
a monument or
That's
something?
it's probably defined too, but you can explain it.
El Pasco signs again. So a pole sign, typically a pylon sign, would be like the Gulfview Square Mall. It's got a couple of legs, looks like almost like a lollipop, right? It's got a sign at the top with a pole. A monument sign I liken to being like a tombstone, goes all the way to the ground. So it could still have two legs inside it, but it's usually wrapped or filled in with aluminum or, you wouldn't see the poles. They wouldn't be visible. So a pole sign would be like, again, a lollipop. So you got to think of the old Texaco sign, right? A circle with a pole. That would be a pole sign, but a monument sign is, and that's what the county has now gone to. You're not going to see any more big pole signs done in the county. They're all going to be monument signs, maximum 11 feet, for up to 600. If you've got 600 feet of frontage, your maximum is going to be 11 feet tall. If you've got more than 600 feet, you might be able to combine two of them and get 15 feet tall. So you're going to see, you'll see them, they're coming down at all the Walmarts, all the Publix, all of them, they're coming down and becoming monument signs instead of pylons or pole signs. Does that help?
Yeah, is there a size or something when you go?
So this,
Monument?
the square footage is based on usually, you're allowed up to 100, well, again,
I mean, the pole itself. Like if it's a really big pole, is that a monument?
no, it still would be a pole sign, yeah. In other words, you're saying if it was like a billboard sign with a 4-foot steel pole, yeah, they still would consider that a pole sign. A monument sign's going to look more like a tombstone. It's going to come all the way to the ground. I can show you pictures afterwards if you want. If you want to see some examples.
I understand. I'm just more worried about just the definition.
Definitions, yeah.
It does not appear to be defined in here, and I think we're saying please use that instead of
Yeah.
pole signs, so we need to make sure that's defined, so that's a good point.
Okay.
So we'll get we'll get a definition for the next time we talk about it.
I know there's entire cities. I don't know how many there are in Florida now. But there are entire cities in Texas where they've gone through and they've taken all pole signs out and become just the monument signs. So, and I know there's some of the newer areas in Florida as they're building out, and especially in South Florida, they have a lot of. They're all monument signs too now.
Because they're not as likely to fall over in a hurricane.
Correct. Which is kind of key considering we like hurricanes here.
Yeah, no, we don't like. They like us.
They like us. Okay. Lori?
Everything that we said. I mean, I would like to see us be able to have digital and activated signs with LED lights and vehicles signs. They have to be able to be moved, not just sitting on the street.
And safe.
And safe. Yeah, that's it.
Ron?
I agree that we just need a better definition of what a definition is.
Fortunately for you, Nancy does
we're
love
all kind of
definitions, so.
guessing at what a definition is, and I would rather see it as see spot run here than
Well, that's what we do. We have a lot of definitions. We just have to make sure we like them.
yeah, because
they've
attorneys can
changed.
write things in
Yeah.
legalese that make it a little tougher for those of us in the general public to understand
You
what
have
it
to
is.
keep asking me. I need to feel needed. Well, that's what we'll talk about. These definitions, when you guys make your decisions and recommendations, we can modify the language so that you understand it. So
So the
hopefully
public
they
will
can
understand it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So realistically, what are we looking as far as, and that's a question between you and Miss Ashley, as
May,
far as
right?
reviewing this? Is that for our May?
Our
meeting?
the standing meeting, yes, it's between this meeting and the one. You're not gonna have enough time for Nancy to put everything together.
Sure, of course.
Try to make everything as streamlined as possible for you guys to make a decision. So it will be at our May meeting, which is
I'm looking now.
May.
Yeah, we canceled the April one, right?
Correct. Yeah, May 13th
May
is the
13th.
next meeting
At 1.
at 1:00.
Okay. So
So I'll bring back.
did everybody hear that? May 13th at 1 p.m. will be that's our standard meeting we'll have. That's our normal meeting we have. And we will be addressing the changes that are brought forth. And at that time, there may be a motion to make a recommendation to council to review it. But we appreciate everybody showing up and giving us your feedback. That's been key for us. Yes, sir, please.
Can I say one more?
Absolutely.
I'm going to give her some more work.
Right.
I had a business in the city of Newport Richey. I had a traffic sign
Okay.
on the side of my building, okay, and when I was open, it was on. When I was closed, it was off. The city of Newport Richey changed their sign ordinances, okay? because my sign was up before they changed their ordinances, I was grandfathered in and they couldn't make me take it down.
Right.
We have that. We have
have
those
that.
provisions.
You're going to run into grandfather problems.
Absolutely. Anytime we change a code, we have that possibility. Yeah. That's
Pinellas
addressed.
And
County
we
does
don't-
not
I don't
grandfather.
look at them
I
as
found
as
that
a
out
problem.
the hard way.
Grandfathering is a very real thing. That's just fair.
Yeah.
So we're talking about as things change and modify, we need a clearly defined set of rules to be able to move forward. So when they go see Dale and say, I need a new sign, he knows what the rules are in the city of Port Richey to be able to give that. So if Mike says, you know what, I want to be able to put specials on for catches, and now your ordinance has changed, great, I can order that sign. Same as the gentleman here for his car business. So we just want to make sure, but yeah, grandfathering is very real here. So I know the city's done it's been difficult at times, but it's very fair. So for the most part, and it will continue to be. Or I'll be sitting out there complaining just like you are. So, all right. Do you have any other business we need to attend to, Miss Nancy? No.
I know of.
In that case, I'll entertain any other motions.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?